So this channel started back in 2020 with a video about this exact camera, the SMTAV PTZ. At that time, we were doing a lot of investments in our live streaming equipment, and I decided to take a little bit of a risk and order kind of at the time what I felt was an off-brand camera that was selling at quite a discount to a lot of the other PTZ cameras at the time, but it looked fairly comparable. And I discovered it actually was fairly capable and offered a good quality at a reasonable price. And I got a lot of questions about it from other people, so I decided, hey, let's just make a video and I can point people at that video. Well, other people found that video, and over the time it's racked up a number of views, and in the years since, other camera manufacturers have reached out and asked me to look at their products, so if you look around the channel, you're gonna find a lot of those. But I never checked back in with the SMTAV folks. So I decided to order up a couple things from them, including what is probably the modern equivalent or the spiritual successor of this, their kind of basic HD PTZ camera. So I'm going to get this one out of the box and we're going to take a look at it, its features, and then do a little bit of comparison with what they were doing a few years ago and see if it's a worthwhile upgrade, or if you are new to the PTZ space, if it's still the way you want to go for your first or second camera. All right, so this is everything that was included in the box, which I can already tell you is a lot more than I remember being included with the original camera. You get the AC power adapter, which is a universal type adapter, so wherever you live, this is going to work for you just depending on which fitment you need on the actual cable that gets plugged into the wall. Next to that, you get a USB-C or USB cable, which is actually really nice. First off, it's pretty long, it's heavy duty, which is good. This camera also uses one of the kind of more oddball USB standard, which is this kind of double up or backpack or piggyback style adapter that is not super common. It's one of the higher speeds, one of the super speed USB standards. But this was a stopgap between old USB-A/B and the newer USB-C standard. So it's nice that they include a cable because not everybody has one of these laying around. You also get an Ethernet cable, which is helpful. You also get this right here, which is the PoE splitter. So if you want to power your camera over PoE, you can, which is always a great feature. We power most everything we have over power over Ethernet, which is great because that lets both the power and the network connection come in over this single network Ethernet cable. But instead of the jack on the camera being enabled for PoE, where the jack in the camera itself can take in the PoE signal, it goes into here first. And then this comes out to plug into the barrel plug connector on your camera, and then the network connector right there. It's an extra step in the process. I'm not sure I like having a dongle when, before it was just straight into the back of the camera itself. But you're going to set this up once and then kind of forget about it, so it's not the end of the world. You get a remote. This is a different remote, kind of a more updated remote, but seems to have pretty much all the same buttons. A little bit larger, but otherwise a fairly general remote. Of course, a user manual. We'll see how helpful that is. And a mounting bracket. And I like it when they include a mounting bracket because you're going to pay 20 bucks for one of these if you want to, buy one off the shelf. But mounting your PTZ camera, especially if you're using it for live streaming, is a great thing to do because when you set presets, even just a little movement of the camera can kind of mess up your presets. So being able to mount it kind of out of the way is nice. So the fact that they kind of include this with the kit is great. All right, well that brings us to the camera itself. And I'm going to go ahead and just put it next to my previous version so we can kind of see the difference. I ordered this one because I really felt like by the specs, this is the successor. This is an HD PTZ camera, seemed to offer all the same features and specs that this one did back in the day, just in an updated thing. Now, right away, I can tell you the new one is definitely physically larger. Like the format is bigger than it was, the base plate for sure. The barrel length on the lens here is a little bit longer. This seems to have a different kind of cooling structure around the back. I've never noticed that being a problem, but it's there if you need it. And otherwise, though, they look fairly similar around back. We can take a look at the port setup. Looks like they've actually dropped some of the legacy ports from the new camera versus the old one, which is not necessarily a bad thing to see. Of course, you've got that upgrade to USB 3 versus USB-C or USB 2. Otherwise, you've got an SDI out, an HDMI out, which I would expect to find. And you also have separate Ethernet ports. You've got one marked net, which I assume is your network port for like your TCP/IP, your internet connection. But then you've got a separate one for your RS-422 and RS-232 inputs as well. Those are kind of older legacy standards that used to be taken care of with a different style port on the old camera. They've obviously moved those over into the network style port. You are probably never going to use that, and that is fine. The network port is the one you want. I can see where this might lead to a little bit of confusion when people are originally setting these up, but you can no doubt probably figure it out. And then finally, you've got a line in, so you can take your audio line in. Most of these cameras, PTZ cameras, do not have microphones built into them. So if you want the audio combined with the video in the camera versus downstream at your switcher or somewhere else, that's your line in. That's what's going to let you do it. Otherwise, nice setup, fairly similar to a lot of the things I've seen out there, but right now I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing. All right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get them both kind of plugged in and set up a little bit, and we're gonna run some camera and some color tests on this guy and then compare them to this one from 4 years ago. All right, so I've got my new SMTAV PTZ hooked up on the test bench. I've got it connected over HDMI into my ATM Mini, which is then being recorded through OBS Studio. I got my standard sort of test card here, which is an industry standard card for different things like gray values and colors and all of that. And we are going to compare that with a shot from the original camera from 4 years ago. But I can say right now this is standing up pretty well to comparable products of the day. Don't see anything there I don't like just now. We're going to check out the on-screen menus real quick, just to see, looking at the instruction booklet, it doesn't look like a whole lot has changed. But we can come in here. So these are the menus that pop up just through the HDMI connection. So we're not connected to the network or anything else like that. This is just how you can set up the camera with the remote that I have in my hand and see on the screen whatever the HDMI is connected up to. So the setup is pretty much as I have seen it before on a lot of these cameras. I will say that I really appreciate that they have added in the IP address. Now, there's actually no way to change this. Some camera manufacturers have gone to letting you in this menu go to a DHCP where it will actually automatically get an IP address from the network and then tell you what it is through this. This one still won't let you do that, which is kind of a bummer. Makes the network side of setup a little more difficult, but at least it will tell you right here what its IP address is that it comes shipped with out of the box. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to hook this up to a network and then a computer that is also on this 192.168.1 network. Sometimes that's not the network you're using, the normal one. You might use something else entirely, where in that case you end up actually connecting the camera over its Ethernet connection directly to your computer, giving your computer a fake address on this network. I usually do 192.168.1.100 or whatever. And then you'll be able to connect to the camera and use its web-based back-end interface to see, whatever you see, all the settings and the changes you can make there. But at least it tells you what the network address is. You don't have to dig into the documentation to find it. Oops, oh my gosh. Sorry. But you see it all right there. All right, so the camera setup has a couple of different functions as far as different things that you can do as far as setting up the look of the camera. Right now it is set up just as it comes out of the box. That's why I like to test stuff. But in the exposure area, you've got the kind of things you would expect. You have this backlight compensation. If you have a backlit environment, which this is not, you can compensate for that. You can see it makes a little bit of difference in a normal environment. I'm going to leave it on. I just think it looks better. You've got the anti-flicker. This was set to 50 hertz from the factory. I set it to 60 because everything in North America runs off of 60. In Japan and the UK, you run off 50. This is important, especially if you're going to have a camera that is showing anything on another screen. So if you've got a camera facing another screen, you're going to want this to be similar. So if you're getting flicker, you might want to come to this setting right here, the flicker setting, and change that to whatever the local one at your time is. No idea what AI exposure is, but we'll turn it on and we'll see what happens. My guess is not much. All right, so this is the color test for my original Smart AV camera. A couple of notes: it plugged in exactly the same. I used the same power adapter, the same HDMI, same everything as the other camera, which is great. I'm also using the same remote from the new camera, so that means they are interchangeable, which is good. So if you've already got a couple of these cameras, you want to add a new one to the mix, the same remote and the same EC adapters and everything are going to work the same for both, which is good. Glad that I didn't see them change that. As far as this color test goes, it's fine. It all looks fine. I don't think it's, maybe a little dimmer. I'm not sure. We'll see what it looks like when they're next to each other. You can tell me when you see it on the screen, but I would say it's very acceptable. The grays show some nice, differentiation. Nothing looks terribly washed out. It's fine. This is the menu system on the older cameras. You can see, older style font, if nothing else, but again, not nearly quite as much features and not as much settings built into the menu. There's no backlight compensation on this older camera, and again, there's nowhere on here where it will tell you its IP address. You just have to know what it is and what you set it to. You do otherwise. A lot of the same features. So a little bit of upgrading has clearly happened on the software side from the older camera to the newer one, but nothing that I would say is revolutionary. All right, as I mentioned before, I took the wired network from the camera, plugged it directly into the Ethernet port on the back of my computer here, changed the IP address on the computer to 192.168.1.100. Use the camera IP address as 192.168.1.123, which is what it said in the menu it was, and that ended up being correct. And as you can see, we have our first problem. It's in Chinese. I think that's Chinese. I don't know. But I'm guessing if I come here to this little world icon, I can take care of that. And yep, okay. English. All right, IP camera. We're going to guess what the username and password is because they're all generally the same. Do I change it now? I do not. All right. Close. Never. All right. All right, so this is a very different window than what I have seen in the past for the Smart AV and other cameras like it. This is definitely seems to be updated a little bit, which is what I like to see. We're straight in. We've got a preview of what the video from the camera. We've got our controls here, so we can control it from the screen if we want to. It says we're in as admin. That's great. Let's go into configuration real quick. We can give it a name. Here's where we can go through and set it to DHCP, which is what you're probably going to maybe want to do. Or if you plan to control this using a PTZ controller, you want to give it a static IP address so the PTZ controller can always find it, but probably on your network. Chances are you're not using this exact network, so this is where you'll come in, set that information, which is nice to see. All the same image instructions and changes that you have kind of in the menu, but here you get to see kind of a real-time preview of what these changes do. And definitely, I like doing this kind of interface better than trying to work it out with the remote. Maybe not the best way to do it. The other thing you have right here is rotate. If, say, you're going to mount this camera upside down, you may want to flip it. And you want to do right side up, then there you go. You have all the ones you need. Digital zoom off. The great thing about these cameras is they do offer optical zooms. There are moving lenses in there that make actually a little bit of noise when they move. But digital zoom is off. That's fine. We don't want it anyway. At least I don't like to use it. Your encoding standards. Kind of what I'm seeing here is this is actually a lot of the same information that was on the previous version. of this setup, but just in, done a little bit nicer. Again, camera settings, you get your image, your video output, how do you want it to show up, and then whether or not you want that on-screen display to come on as well, which, I guess is okay. You may want to add in some, this is a camera, Title 1. Okay, and it says up here in the corner, you can barely read it, this is a camera, which I guess is nice. I suppose if you wanted to label your cameras, if you're using this like in a security setting, you may want to be able to label and put something up there. You can also, as you see, include the date up there. Again, if you're doing more of a security camera setup versus live streaming, that might be important. I don't remember seeing this in the previous system with the on-screen display, which I like. Again, audio is for that audio input line in that you have. Got it turned off because we don't mess around with that. All your network settings, which are helpful, your Ethernet that we saw before in that other location. And then finally, you've got system information. Again, you can give the device a name, where you want your time zone to be. If you ever wonder where this camera came from, right there, Beijing time zone. That's not where I am. All right, so the SMTAV PA20X, I believe it's what it's known as. What do we think? It's actually really good, especially for what it is, which is a pretty basic, especially in today's world, pretty basic PTZ camera. It does all the things you expect a PTZ camera to do. The optics are on par, if not a little bit better than they were in the 4-year-old model, and on par with anything else that I've tested lately. There's a couple of things that I would love to see them work on, especially that network setting stuff. Other manufacturers have figured out better solutions there, and they're a little behind on that one. Turns out this camera is not NDI compatible. They do sell you one that is, but this one is not, and the reason for that is price. I remember when I first posted the video 4 years ago on this one, how enamored I was that you could get this much camera for $700, I believe at the time is what I paid for it. This camera with its updates and its as good, if not better, optics, or certainly better image settings available to it, I paid $330 for. That's a great price for a camera that offers all of the same features, and in fact a couple of new ones. You can hook it up to a PTZ controller if you would like, through all the standard formats, so you can control it that way. So if you need to, maybe you've got one camera you want to go to 2, or 2 cameras you want to go to 3, it's definitely an option, especially since it uses the same cables and the same power and the same remote controls as the previous model, and frankly as in several other models that I've tested that have come with pretty much the same power adapter and the same remote control. I would never recommend upgrading from to this one from this one. It is not that much different. If you're already running one of these older ones successfully in your setup, leave it alone, that's fine. But especially if you want to add or get into the PTZ space, the fact that you can get this for $330 is just crazy. I actually bought this for my new podcasting studio I'm putting together. We wanted multiple cameras for it. I wanted to be able to control them all through a controller, and I was able to get 2 additional cameras to go with this one for less than the cost that I originally bought this one for. And the new ones are nicer, which is kind of how it goes with technology, and we all kind of know it. So the SMTAV brand continues to be a good buy, especially for the value. Definitely one of the cheapest cameras I've tested in a long time. Not a lot of extra bells and whistles, not having that NDI built in, and the network stuff and all of that maybe isn't great. But if you can deal with that at the price point, you really can't go wrong. Yeah. All right, well, thanks for hanging out. If you have any questions about this or anything else, please take a look at the comments. Also take a look at the links, especially links to Amazon for these products if you're interested in purchasing. Those links are 100% the way that I support this channel and how I'm able to purchase equipment to do reviews on. So please check that out again as well. And until I see you again, have a great day.